Before we begin, let us know where you're listening from. After the story, rate it from 1 to 10. Now, let's start. The autumn sky blazed crimson over the Saxon coast as blood soaked the shoreline. Flames licked at thatched roofs, sending plumes of black smoke toward the heavens. The raid had been swift and merciless, as raids always were when Cnut Asgarson's longship, Dragon's Breath, led the fleet. The villagers of Ravensmead had little warning before the Norsemen descended upon them, taking what they deemed rightfully theirs by conquest. Ethelind Haraldsdottir, called Adela by those close to her, pressed her back against the rough stone wall of the village's small chapel, clutching a bronze knife. At 20 summers, she had survived 2 previous raids, but never one so devastating. Her father, the village blacksmith, had taught her to hide rather than flee. Running prey gets hunted, he would say. But this time, he hadn't made it to safety himself. The sounds of battle had faded to distant echoes, replaced by the Vikings' victory songs and the weeping of her people. Adela knew she should remain hidden until the Norsemen returned to their ships, laden with plunder and slaves. Yet something, courage or foolishness, drew her from her hiding place as darkness fell. Slipping between shadows, she made her way toward the shore. Perhaps she could free some captives before the longships departed. The cool autumn air carried the scent of salt and smoke as she crept through the devastation that had once been her home. A groan stopped her. Barely audible, it came from a thicket of gorse near the path leading to the beach. Adela hesitated, knife ready, then carefully parted the prickly branches. A man lay there, his massive frame barely concealed by the bushes. Even in the growing darkness, his clothing marked him as a Norseman, and not just any warrior. The silver arm rings, the quality of his tunic beneath his mail, and the ornate sword at his side identified him as a chieftain. Blood soaked his side where an axe or sword had found its mark between the rings of his armor. Her first instinct was to leave him, or better yet, finish what some brave Saxon had started. This man had likely ordered the deaths of her neighbors, perhaps her father. His blood would be just payment. The Viking's eyes opened suddenly, piercing blue even in the dim light, and locked onto hers. No fear showed in his gaze, only a calm acceptance of his fate. "Do it, Saxon," he said in heavily accented but understandable English. "Send me to Valhalla with your blade. I would rather die by a woman's hand than be taken by wolves while I sleep." Adela's grip tightened on her knife. One thrust, and she would have vengeance for her village. "My men have left me," he continued, grimacing as he shifted. "They believe me dead or soon to be. Such is the way of things when a chief falls in battle." "You're their leader?" Adela asked, her voice barely above a whisper. A nod. "Cnut Asgarson, Jarl of Hedaby." The name was known even in Saxon lands, a fearsome raider whose ships had been terrorizing the coast for 3 seasons. The man responsible for countless deaths, including, perhaps, her father's. "Then I should kill you and be celebrated by my people," she said, pressing the knife's point against his throat. Cnut didn't flinch. "You would be justified. But answer me this, Saxon woman, if you kill me, will it bring back your dead? Will it rebuild your village?" The question struck her like a physical blow. No, it wouldn't. Nothing would. And somehow, killing this man, this enemy, while he lay helpless seemed dishonorable, something her father would never have approved of despite his hatred for the Northmen. Adela lowered the knife, disgusted with both him and herself. "Why should I spare you when you showed no mercy to my people?" "I make no excuses for what I am," Cnut replied. "I am a warrior. I follow the old ways. But I have never killed women or children, and I punish any of my men who do." Whether it was truth or a dying man's attempt to salvage his honor, Adela couldn't tell. Yet something in his direct gaze made her believe him. Or perhaps she simply needed to believe that even these brutal raiders had some code of honor. "If I leave you here, you'll die," she said flatly. "Yes. And if I help you?" His lips curved slightly. "Then I will owe you a life debt. Among my people, there is no greater bond." Adela knew she was making a decision that could damn her in the eyes of her surviving neighbors. Yet the thought of leaving any man, even this enemy, to die slowly seemed wrong. Her mother, before fever had taken her 5 winters past, had taught her healing arts. Those skills were meant to preserve life, not to choose who deserved to live. "I will help you," she said at last, "not for any debt, but because it's what my mother would have done. And because killing a wounded man brings no honor." Something like respect flickered in Cnut's eyes. "You speak of honor like a Norse woman." "I speak of honor like a human being," she corrected him sharply. Hiding the wounded Viking chief in an abandoned shepherd's hut on the edge of the forest proved more difficult than Adela had anticipated. Cnut was a giant of a man, his frame solid with muscle, and though he tried to support his own weight, he was weakening quickly from blood loss. By the time she had him settled on a straw pallet in the hut, her dress was soaked with his blood. The wound was deep, a sword thrust that had penetrated beneath his ribs. By all rights, he should already be dead. "You're fortunate," she said as she cleaned the wound with water she'd collected from a nearby stream. "The blade missed your vitals, but infection will kill you if the bleeding doesn't." Cnut watched her work with an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "You have done this before." "My mother was a healer. I learned from her." Adela crushed herbs she'd gathered along the way, yarrow for bleeding, garlic to ward off corruption, and packed them into the wound. Cnut hissed but didn't flinch. "Your mother taught you well." "The same mother your kind killed in a raid 3 summers ago," she replied coldly. Cnut's expression darkened. "That was not my doing. I have raided these shores for only 2 summers. Does it matter whose sword it was? Your people, your ways." Adela bound the wound tightly with strips torn from her underskirt. "I need to find more herbs and food. Don't move, or you'll start bleeding again." "Where would I go, Saxon woman?" "I am at your mercy. My name is Adela, not a Saxon woman." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Adela. A beautiful name." She ignored the comment and left the hut, pausing only long enough to ensure no one from the village was nearby. The survivors would be gathering their dead, assessing what could be salvaged. No one would be searching for her yet, but by morning, they would notice her absence. As she gathered herbs in the deepening twilight, Adela questioned her sanity. She was risking everything to save the life of a man whose very existence represented everything she should hate. Yet there had been something in his eyes, not just the acceptance of death, but a dignity, an honor that reminded her of her father. Her father, who might now be dead because of the very man she was helping. For 3 days, Adela divided her time between the village and the shepherd's hut. In Ravensmead, she helped bury the dead, including her father, whose body had been found near the smithy. He had died defending his home, his hammer still clutched in his lifeless hand. With each shovelful of earth she helped pile over his grave, her resolve to abandon the wounded Viking grew. Yet each night, she returned to the hut with food and fresh bandages, telling herself it would be the last time. And each night, Cnut greeted her with those piercing blue eyes that seemed to see through her grief to something deeper. On the 4th night, she found him sitting up, his color better. "You should be resting," she chided, setting down a bundle containing bread, cheese, and dried fish she'd managed to take from the village stores. "I have rested enough." His voice was stronger. "Tell me of your village, Adela. How many died in our raid?" The question took her by surprise. Raiders didn't typically concern themselves with the aftermath of their violence. 17 men, 3 women. 5 taken as slaves. She met his gaze directly. "Including my father." Cnut's expression remained impassive, but something flickered in his eyes, regret, perhaps. "He fought well. With his blacksmith's hammer. He took 2 of your warriors with him." A nod of respect. "A good death. He will be remembered. Not by your people. By you. And now by me." Cnut reached for the bundle of food, unwrapping it slowly. "Your people rebuild already. We have little choice. Winter comes soon." Adela sat on a rough wooden stool across from him. "Why do you care? You'll likely return next spring to destroy it all again." Cnut broke the bread in half, offering her a portion which she refused. Perhaps. Or perhaps not. What does that mean? He chewed thoughtfully before answering. The ways of my people are changing. Some look to new lands, not just to raid, but to settle. To farm. To build. That's not what I've heard of Vikings. A smile touched his lips. Viking is what we do, not what we are. We are Norse. And like all people, we seek better lives for our children. By stealing from others. By taking what we need. Is that so different from your kings who demand tribute from their people? Who send men to die in their petty wars? Cnut leaned forward, wincing slightly. All men take, Adela. Some are simply more honest about it. The conversation troubled her, not because of his words, but because they made a strange kind of sense. She had never considered the Norse as anything but bloodthirsty raiders. To think of them as people with families, with hopes for their children's futures, it complicated her hatred. You should eat, Cnut said, interrupting her thoughts. You grow thinner each day. Food is scarce. Many storehouses were burned. Without hesitation, he extended his portion back to her. Then take this. I have gone hungry many times. It will not kill me. The gesture, simple as it was, cracked something in Adela's carefully maintained wall of hostility. She accepted the bread, breaking it again and returning half to him. We both eat, or neither does. They shared the meal in silence, the first time they had eaten together rather than Adela simply leaving food for him. When finished, she checked his wound. The herbs had done their work, new pink flesh was forming at the edges of the gash. You will live, she said, rebinding it with fresh cloth. Thanks to you. His hand caught hers as she worked, his calloused fingers surprisingly gentle. Why did you save me, Adela? The truth. She could have pulled away but didn't. I don't know. Perhaps because killing you would have made me no better than what I believe you to be. And what do you believe me to be? A murderer. A thief. An enemy of my people. Cnut's thumb traced a small circle on her wrist, sending an unwelcome warmth through her. All true. I am also a son, a brother, and a leader of men who look to me for protection. We are all many things, Adela of Ravensmead. She withdrew her hand, unsettled by both his touch and his words. You should rest. Your strength returns, but the wound is deep. And when I am healed? What then? It was the question she had been avoiding. What would she do with him once he could walk, fight, kill again? That is for tomorrow, she said, rising. Tonight, you rest. As autumn deepened toward winter, Adela's visits to the shepherd's hut became the center of her days. Cnut regained his strength rapidly, the powerful body healing with a vitality that surprised even him. Soon he was able to move around the small hut, and then to venture outside on clear days, though always cautious to remain hidden from any passing villagers. Their conversations grew longer, ranging from the simple exchange of words in each other's languages to deeper discussions of their beliefs and customs. Adela learned of Odin and Thor, of the great hall of Valhalla where warriors feasted after death. Cnut listened as she spoke of the Christ God and his teachings of peace, his expression skeptical but interested. Your God allows himself to be killed without fighting, he asked one evening as they sat before a small fire. This makes no sense. He sacrificed himself for others, Adela explained. There is courage in that, too. Cnut considered this. Perhaps. But a strange courage. No stranger than believing that dying in battle is the only worthy death. Not the only worthy death, he corrected. But the most glorious. To die with a sword in hand, facing your enemy, what better way to meet the end that comes to all men? Adela thought of her father. He died that way. Was it glorious? It brought only grief to those who loved him. Something softened in Cnut's expression. Death always brings grief to the living. That cannot be avoided. But how we face it, that is what defines us. And how would you face it? Standing. Fighting. His blue eyes caught the firelight. Protecting what matters. And what matters to Cnut Asgarson? He studied her face for a long moment. Once, I would have said honor, glory, wealth. Now. He looked away. Now I am less certain. The admission surprised her. This man, this warrior who had seemed so sure of his path, was questioning his purpose. Because of her? Or because of the brush with death that had brought them together? As the days passed, Adela became increasingly aware of the dangerous path she walked. Helping the Viking chief had begun as an act of mercy, then become a duty as she tended his wound. But now, it was something else entirely. She found herself lingering at the hut, inventing reasons to stay longer, to talk more, to simply be in his presence. And worse, she had begun to see him not as the Viking wall, the enemy, but as Cnut, a man of surprising depth, intelligence, and even tenderness. A man whose smile could warm her more effectively than the small fire they shared. A man whose touch, when their hands accidentally met, sent her heart racing in a way that had nothing to do with fear. The villagers had begun to notice her absences, her distraction. Her closest friend, Wulfric, had followed her one day, though she had managed to lose him in the forest before reaching the hut. But suspicions were growing, and with them, the danger, not just to her, but to Cnut as well. You should go, she told him one evening in early winter as snow began to fall outside the hut. You're strong enough now? Your wound has healed. Cnut, who had been whittling a small piece of wood into what looked like a bird, set down his knife. You wish me gone. What I wish doesn't matter. If they find you here, they'll kill you. And me as well, for helping you. He stood, his height impressive in the small space. Then come with me. The suggestion stole her breath. What? Come with me to my homeland. To Hedabai. Cnut closed the distance between them, his hands gently grasping her shoulders. There is nothing for you here but grief and hardship. Winter will be cruel to a village half destroyed. These are my people, she protested, though her voice lacked conviction. I can't abandon them. You already have, in their eyes. The moment you chose to save me. His fingers traced the line of her jaw. Adela, I have watched you these past weeks. You bring food to me that you should be eating yourself. You risk discovery every day. For what? For a man your people would execute without hesitation. She couldn't answer. The truth was too dangerous, too impossible to acknowledge. You feel it too, he continued, his voice dropping lower. This thing between us. This bond that should not be, yet is. It's madness, she whispered. Perhaps. But I would rather live in madness with you than return to sanity without you. His thumb brushed her lower lip. Come with me. Be my wife. My queen. The word shocked her. Queen? I'm a blacksmith's daughter, not nobility. Among my people, a Jarl chooses his wife for her strength, her wisdom, her heart. You have shown all three. His eyes held hers, earnest and determined. I vow to you, Adela Haraldsdottir, that if you come with me, you will stand at my side as my equal. As the mother of my children. As the queen of my people. Your people would never accept a Saxon woman, they will accept what their Jarl commands. A smile touched his lips. And when they know you, they will love you as I have come to love you. Love. The word hung between them, impossible and yet undeniable. Adela had fought against it, had told herself that what she felt was merely the attachment of a healer to her patient. But in the firelit silence of the shepherd's hut, with snow falling softly outside, she could no longer lie to herself. She had fallen in love with Cnut Asgarson. With the enemy of her people. With the man who had led the raid that killed her father. I can't, she said, tears filling her eyes. How could I live with myself? How could I look at you and not see the faces of those your men killed? Pain flashed across his features. I cannot undo what has been done. I would give my life to bring your father back to you, but that power belongs to the gods alone. He released her shoulders, stepping back. I ask only that you judge me for who I am now, not for what I was when we met. And who are you now? She asked, her voice barely audible. A man changed. A man who has seen the courage and compassion of an enemy and found it greater than his own. A man who now questions the path he has walked. Cnut's expression was open, vulnerable in a way she had never seen. A man who loves you, Adela, beyond reason or wisdom. She turned away, unable to bear the intensity of his gaze. Give me time. Please. Time is the one thing we may not have, he replied softly. The snows come earlier this year. Soon the sea will be too dangerous for even Viking ships. How would we even reach your people? Your ship is gone. There are ways. Fishing boats along the coast. Or overland to a settlement I know of 2 days' journey north. He didn't approach her again, respecting her need for distance. But you must decide soon, Adela. For both our sakes. That night, as she lay on her pallet in the village longhouse where the survivors had gathered for warmth, Adela stared into the darkness, torn between duty and desire, between the life she had known and the uncertain future Cnut offered. Could she leave everything, her home, her people, her father's grave, to follow a man who represented everything she had been taught to hate? Could she face the mothers who had lost sons, the children who had lost fathers, knowing she had chosen their enemy? Yet when she closed her eyes, it was Cnut's face she saw. His strength, his honor, his growing gentleness with her. The way he listened when she spoke, truly listened as few men ever had. The respect in his eyes when she challenged his beliefs. The love that had grown between them, impossible and yet more real than anything she had ever known. Dawn broke with her decision unmade, her heart still divided. She went about her morning tasks mechanically, helping to distribute the dwindling food supplies, assisting in repairs to the damaged houses. All the while, her mind was at the shepherd's hut, with the man waiting for her answer. Midday came, and with it, disaster. Wulfric approached her as she drew water from the village well, his expression grim. You've been helping someone, he said without preamble. Someone in the old shepherd's hut. Adela's heart froze. What are you talking about? Don't lie to me, Adela. I followed you yesterday. I saw you enter, though I didn't approach. His eyes, once friendly, now held accusation. Who is it? One of the Viking raiders. Wulfric, please, tell me it isn't true, he demanded, gripping her arm. Tell me you haven't betrayed us all. She couldn't speak, couldn't find words to explain what had happened, how everything had changed. Her silence was all the confirmation he needed. I'm going to the elder, Wulfric said, releasing her arm as if her touch burned him. They'll decide what to do with you, and with whoever you're hiding. No. Adela grabbed his sleeve. Wulfric, listen to me. It's not what you think, it's exactly what I think, he spat. I saw how your father died, Adela. I helped bury him. And you dishonor his memory by aiding the enemy. He shook off her grip. You're not the woman I thought you were. As he strode toward the elder's house, Adela made the decision that had eluded her all night. There was no choice now, no time for doubt. She had to warn Cnut. Without returning to the longhouse for her few possessions, she ran. Through the village, past the burnt-out shells of homes, into the forest that would take her to the shepherd's hut. Snow crunched beneath her feet, the cold air burning her lungs as she pushed herself to move faster. She burst into the hut, startling Cnut, who had been repairing a tear in his tunic. They know, she gasped, breathless from her run. They're coming. He was on his feet instantly, reaching for his sword. How many? How soon? I don't know. One saw me coming here. He's telling the elder now. Tears threatened to spill from her eyes. Cnut, I'm so sorry, no time for that. He moved with the efficiency of a warrior preparing for battle, gathering the few possessions he had accumulated. We must go. Now. We? His eyes met hers, fierce and determined. Yes, we. Unless you wish to stay and face their judgment alone. The choice was made, had perhaps been made the moment she decided to save him all those weeks ago. "I'll come with you." Cnut nodded once, satisfied. "We'll head north. The settlement I spoke of, Ravhome. My people established it 2 summers ago. Will they welcome a Saxon woman?" A grim smile crossed his face. "They will welcome whoever their Jarl brings home. And they will respect the woman who saved his life." He handed her his knife. "Take this. The forest is dangerous, and not just from your people's pursuit." They left the hut as the first shouts reached them, villagers fanning out into the forest, calling Adela's name, some with anger, others with concern. Cnut led the way, moving with surprising stealth for a man of his size, choosing paths that would hide their tracks in the fallen snow. As they crested a hill overlooking Ravensmead, Adela paused, looking back at the only home she had ever known. Smoke rose from cook fires, children played in the snow despite the hardship, life continued. Life would always continue, with or without her. "Are you certain?" Cnut asked quietly, following her gaze. "This is your last chance to return." Adela thought of her father, of what he would say if he could see her now, running away with the enemy, with a pagan Norseman. He would be furious, heartbroken. Yet he had also taught her to follow her heart, to be true to herself above all else. "I'm certain," she said, turning away from the village. "My place is with you now." The journey north was arduous, made more difficult by the need to avoid Saxon settlements and patrols. They traveled by night when possible, sheltering in caves or abandoned buildings during the day. Game was scarce, but Cnut proved skilled at snaring rabbits and finding edible plants even beneath the snow. On the 3rd night, as they huddled together for warmth in a small cave, Cnut spoke of Hedabai, of the life that awaited them if they survived the journey to Ravhome and then across the sea. "My hall stands on a hill overlooking the fjord," he said, his arms around her as they shared his bearskin cloak. "It is not as grand as some Jarl's halls, but it is strong and warm. There is land for growing crops, forests for hunting, and the sea for fishing. And your people? Will they truly accept me?" He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Some will question at first. It is their way. But they will see your strength, your skills as a healer. And they will respect that you saved their Jarl's life. And if they don't, then we will find another place. There are new lands to the west, Iceland, Greenland. Places where a man and woman might build a life free from the shadows of the past." His arms tightened around her. "But first, we must reach Ravhome." They reached the Norse settlement on the 4th day, approaching cautiously as smoke from its longhouses rose against the winter sky. Ravhome was smaller than Adela had expected, perhaps 15 buildings surrounding a central hall, protected by a wooden palisade. Ships were drawn up on the shore of a natural harbor, covered for the winter. Cnut stopped at the edge of the forest. "Wait here," he instructed, handing her his sword. "If I do not return or if you see trouble, run. Head west along the coast. There are other settlements. You think they might harm you? Your own people." A shadow crossed his face. "When I did not return from the raid, they may have chosen a new leader. Such is our way." "Then I'm coming with you," Adela said firmly. "We face this together." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Together, then. But stay close to me, and let me speak first." As they approached the settlement's gate, shouts went up from the watchman. Warriors appeared on the palisade, weapons ready. Cnut raised his empty hands, calling out in Norse. Whatever he said caused a commotion, and soon the gate swung open. A tall, red-haired man emerged, flanked by warriors. His eyes widened at the sight of Cnut. "Jarl Cnut," he said in Norse, loud enough for Adela to hear. "We thought you dead." "Not yet, Thorvald," Cnut replied in the same language. Though not for lack of trying on the Saxon's part. The man, Thorvald, approached cautiously, his gaze moving from Cnut to Adela. "And who is this you bring to our gates?" "A Saxon woman." Cnut placed a protective arm around Adela's shoulders. "This is Adela Haraldsdottir. She saved my life when I was left for dead. She is under my protection. Murmurs ran through the gathered warriors. Thorvald's expression remained skeptical. A Saxon? Helping a Norse warrior? Why would she do this? That is between her and me, Cnut said firmly. But know this, she comes not as a captive or a thrall, but as my chosen woman. Any who disrespect her disrespect me. The declaration sent another wave of murmurs through the crowd, some disapproving, others merely surprised. Adela stood straighter, meeting their stares with a dignity she didn't entirely feel. Thorvald studied them both for a long moment, then broke into a sudden grin. Well, if she managed to keep you alive, Cnut, she must be a woman of great skill or great patience. He stepped forward, extending a hand to Adela. Welcome to Ravholm, Adela Haraldsdottir. Any woman who can tame Cnut Asgarson deserves our respect. The tension broken, they were ushered into the settlement. The Norse, Adela quickly discovered, were a curious people. While some regarded her with suspicion, most seemed more interested in her story than troubled by her Saxon blood. Women approached her with questions about healing herbs, children stared openly at her lighter hair and dress, warriors asked Cnut for tales of his escape. That evening, in the settlement's great hall, Cnut recounted the raid on Ravensmead, his wounding, and Adela's rescue. He spoke in Norse, but occasionally translated parts for her benefit. He told of her skill as a healer, her courage in hiding him, and the ultimate choice she had made to leave her people. What he didn't mention was the love that had grown between them. That, Adela realized, was something he kept private, sacred, a gift just for the two of them. As the winter deepened, Adela found her place in Ravholm. Her knowledge of healing herbs made her valuable, especially when sickness swept through the settlement during the darkest days of winter. She learned Norse quickly, though she retained her Saxon accent which Cnut claimed to find endearing. Not all accepted her, of course. Some of the older warriors muttered about Saxon witchcraft when she healed a child's fever, and one of the women, Hilda, whose husband had died in a raid the previous summer, made no secret of her disdain. She bewitches our Jarl, Hilda said loudly one day as Adela passed. No true Norse leader would take a Saxon to his bed. Cnut, hearing this, had nearly confronted the woman, but Adela stopped him. Let her speak, she said quietly. Words cannot harm me. Disrespect can spread like fire, he warned. So can understanding, Adela replied. Give them time. Her patience was rewarded as winter turned to spring. The success of her remedies could not be denied, nor could the obvious devotion between her and Cnut. Even Hilda grudgingly accepted a salve for her aching joints when the damp spring air made them painful. As the ice began to break up along the coast, preparations began for the journey to Hedeby. Cnut's longship, Storm Raven, had returned to Ravholm at the end of autumn, its crew believing their Jarl dead but honoring him by bringing his vessel home. Now it would carry him, and Adela, across the sea to his homeland. The night before their departure, as they lay together in the small house they had been given, Cnut traced patterns on Adela's bare shoulder. Are you afraid? He asked. Of the sea? A little, she admitted. I've never been on a ship before. Not of the sea. Of what awaits in Hedeby? Adela considered the question. Yes, she said honestly. Your people here have had months to accept me. In Hedeby, I will be a stranger. A Saxon stranger. You will be their Jarl's woman. Their future queen. Cnut's hand moved to her hair, twining a strand around his finger. But more importantly, you will be yourself. And that is why they will come to love you, as I do. You speak with great confidence for a man who once raided my village, she teased gently. I speak with the confidence of a man who has seen you win over even Hilda, the most stubborn woman in all the Norse lands. He kissed her, a lingering touch of lips that promise more. Besides, I am their Jarl. They have no choice but to accept my choice. Is that how you rule? By command rather than consensus. He laughed softly. You know me better than that. A wise Jarl listens to his people. But in matters of the heart, even a Jarl must follow his own path. The journey to Hedeby took 6 days, the Storm Raven cutting through the waves with a grace that belied its size. Adela, after an initial bout of seasickness, found herself enjoying the voyage. The crew, men who had raided with Cnut for years, were initially wary of her but soon accepted her presence, especially after she treated a nasty cut one of them received while adjusting the sail. Cnut stood at the prow most days, his face to the wind, occasionally pointing out landmarks or sea creatures to Adela. In these moments, she saw the boy he must have been before becoming a warrior, curious, excited, full of wonder at the world. "There," he said on the 6th day, pointing to a distant shoreline. Hedabai. The settlement was far larger than Ravholm, a proper town with hundreds of buildings spread around a natural harbor where dozens of ships were anchored. Smoke rose from forges and cook fires, and even from a distance, Adela could see people moving about, a bustling community that reminded her, with a pang, of what Ravensmead might have been without the raids that had diminished it over the years. As the Storm Raven approached the harbor, horns sounded from the shore. Word of their Jarl's return had preceded them, carried by a faster ship that had left Ravholm days before them. People gathered along the waterfront, pointing and calling out. "They welcome their Jarl home," said Thorvald, who had accompanied them on the journey. "They welcome a ghost," Cnut replied. "Many months have passed since they believed me dead." When the ship docked, a delegation awaited them, warriors in fine clothing, old men with long beards who Adela guessed were advisors or priests, and at their center, a woman of perhaps 40 summers, her blonde hair streaked with grey, her bearing regal. "My sister, Sigrid," Cnut murmured to Adela. "She would have managed my affairs in my absence." Sigrid's face showed no emotion as Cnut disembarked, though her knuckles whitened where she gripped her fur cloak. Only when he stood before her did she speak. "Brother," she said in Norse. "You returned from the dead." "I was never dead, sister. Merely delayed." Cnut embraced her, and after a moment's hesitation, she returned the gesture fiercely. "The gods favor you," she said as they separated. "Odin must have more battles for you to fight. Or perhaps he sent me a Valkyrie in mortal form." Cnut turned, extending his hand to Adela who still stood on the ship's deck. "Come, Adela. Meet my sister." Whispers spread through the crowd as Adela joined Cnut on the dock. Her Saxon clothing, though worn from travel, still marked her as clearly as if she carried a banner declaring her origins. Sigrid's eyes narrowed. "You bring a Saxon woman to Hedabai." "I bring the woman who saved my life when I lay dying," Cnut replied evenly. "The woman who nursed me back to health at great risk to herself. The woman I intend to make my wife and queen." The declaration, made publicly before his people, sent a ripple of surprise through the crowd. Sigrid's expression hardened. "Brother, we must speak privately," she said, her voice tight. "There are matters you do not understand, alliances that have been negotiated in your absence. Whatever arrangements you have made will have to be unmade," Cnut said firmly. "My decision is final." The tension between the siblings was palpable. Adela, uncomfortable with being the center of such controversy within moments of arriving, spoke for the first time. "Perhaps your sister is right," she said in careful Norse. "Private discussions would be better than public disagreements on your first day home." Both Cnut and Sigrid looked at her with surprise, Cnut because she had sided with his sister, Sigrid because the Saxon woman spoke their language. "Wise counsel," Sigrid acknowledged grudgingly. "Come then, both of you. We will speak in the hall." The great hall of Hedabai stood on a hill overlooking the town, its massive timber frame decorated with intricate carvings of gods and heroes. Inside, a central hearth provided warmth and light, with benches along the walls and a high seat at the far end where the Jarl would sit in judgment or receive guests. Once the doors closed behind them, leaving only Cnut, Adela, Sigrid, and a few trusted advisors, Sigrid's composure cracked. "Have you lost your mind?" she demanded. "A Saxon woman? Do you know what our people will say?" "They will say their Jarl has chosen a strong, wise, compassionate woman to stand beside him," Cnut replied calmly. "One who has already proven her worth. They will say you have been bewitched," countered an old man with a white beard. "That Saxon magic has clouded your judgment." "Nonsense, Ulf," Cnut dismissed the suggestion. "I have never had clearer judgment than when I asked Adela to come with me." Sigrid paced before the hearth. While you were gone, believed dead, I negotiated an alliance with Jarl Bjorn of the North Islands. His daughter, Frydis, was to marry the new Jarl of Hedeby once the Thing assembly confirmed him. And who was to be this new Jarl? Cnut asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. Your cousin, Hakon, Sigrid replied. He has led raids in your absence, defended our lands from rival Jarls. The people respect him. Hakon is a good warrior, but he lacks the temperament to lead, Cnut said dismissively. And now it matters not, for I have returned. Any arrangements made on the assumption of my death are void. It's not so simple, Sigrid insisted. Messengers have been sent. Agreements made. Bjorn's daughter travels here even now, expecting to marry the Jarl of Hedeby. Then she will be disappointed. Cnut's patience was clearly wearing thin. Or perhaps Hakon would like a wife. But I have made my choice. Throughout this exchange, Adela had remained silent, observing the dynamics, understanding more than perhaps they realized. Now she stepped forward. If I may speak, she asked, looking to Cnut, who nodded. My lord Cnut has honored me with his choice, she began, addressing Sigrid directly. But I understand your concerns. An alliance with this Jarl Bjorn would strengthen your position. My presence threatens that. You understand our ways better than I expected, Sigrid acknowledged. I have spent months learning your language, your customs. I know the importance of alliances among your people. Adela took a deep breath. If my presence will cause division or weakness for Hedeby, then perhaps, no, Cnut interrupted sharply. Do not even suggest it, Adela. I will not send you away. Hear me out, she insisted. I was not going to suggest leaving. Only that perhaps there is another way to secure this alliance without marriage. Trade agreements, perhaps. Or a military alliance sealed with oath rings rather than wedding vows. The advisors exchanged glances. Sigrid's expression shifted from hostility to thoughtful consideration. The Saxon woman thinks like a Norse diplomat, said one of the advisors, an older man with a scar running down his cheek. Bjorn values trade as much as marriage ties. And his son, Eric, is of age to lead raids, added another. A place of honor in your warband might please him as much as a marriage would please his sister. Cnut looked at Adela with undisguised admiration. You continue to surprise me. I merely suggest what seems practical, she replied. I have no wish to begin our life here by creating enemies for you. Sigrid studied Adela with new interest. Perhaps my brother's judgment is not as clouded as I feared. She turned to Cnut. I will consider these alternatives. But the people will still question your choice. Let them question, Cnut said confidently. When they know Adela as I do, their doubts will fade like morning mist. The prediction proved partly true. As days turned to weeks, many in Hedeby came to accept Adela's presence. Her healing skills won her allies among the women, and her quick mind impressed the advisors who had initially doubted her. Cnut's cousin, Hakon, after an initial period of resentment, became one of her strongest supporters after she saved his youngest child from a fever that had claimed 2 other children in the settlement. Yet opposition remained. Some of the older warriors muttered about Saxon influence weakening their Jarl's resolve. Priests of the old gods warned that Odin would be displeased by a foreigner in the Jarl's bed. And Jarl Bjorn, when he arrived with his daughter only to find his marriage alliance rejected, made no secret of his displeasure. You insult my house, Bjorn thundered during a feast held in his honor despite the awkward circumstances. You reject my daughter for a Saxon thrall. Adela is no thrall, Cnut replied evenly, though Adela could see the tension in his jaw. She is my chosen woman, and you will speak of her with respect in my hall. Bjorn's face darkened. Your father would be ashamed. He understood the old ways, the importance of Norse blood. My father is dead, and I am Jarl now. Cnut's voice remained calm, but his hand moved to the hilt of his sword. I have offered you generous trade terms and a place of honor for your son in my war band. Do not test my patience further. The confrontation might have escalated had Adela not intervened, approaching Bjorn's daughter, Frydis, who sat stiffly at her father's side. The journey from the North Islands must have been difficult, Adela said in her accented Norse. I hope the accommodations we have prepared meet with your approval. Frydis, a beautiful young woman with hair the color of summer wheat, seemed surprised by the direct address. They are adequate, she replied coolly. I would be honored to show you our healing house tomorrow, Adela continued. I understand your islands have unique herbs that we do not have here. Perhaps an exchange of knowledge would benefit both our peoples. The offer of professional respect, healer to healer, seemed to catch Frydis off guard. You practice healing arts. I was trained by my mother, and have expanded my knowledge since coming north. Adela smiled genuinely. Knowledge should not be bound by the divisions of men. Something in Frydis's expression softened slightly. Perhaps I will visit your healing house. The small exchange diffused some of the tension, though Bjorn remained disgruntled. By the end of the feast, however, preliminary agreements had been reached, trade terms that favored both Hedeby and the North Islands, and a position for Bjorn's son that acknowledged his status without requiring Nut to keep a potential enemy too close. As spring gave way to summer, preparations began for Nut and Adela's wedding. The ceremony would take place at midsummer, when the days were longest and the gods closest to the mortal realm. It would be a union unlike any in Hedeby's memory, a Norse jarl and a Saxon woman, enemies by birth, united by something stronger than the hatreds of their ancestors. Are you nervous? Sigrid asked Adela the night before the ceremony as they sat in the women's house where tradition dictated the bride should spend her last night as an unmarried woman. Yes, Adela admitted. Not about marrying Nut, but about what it means for both of us. There are still those who oppose our union. Sigrid's attitude toward Adela had evolved from hostile to grudgingly respectful to something approaching friendship over the months. There will always be those who cling to old hatreds, she said, helping Adela arrange her hair for the ceremony. But you have won over more than you realize. Your actions speak louder than your accent. Do you think it can last? This peace between me and your people. Our people, Sigrid corrected her. Tomorrow you become one of us in name as well as deed. She secured a silver clasp in Adela's hair. As for lasting peace, that depends as much on them as on you. But you have made a strong beginning. The wedding day dawned clear and warm, the sun rising early as it did during the northern summer. Adela was dressed in a gown of fine blue wool embroidered with silver thread, a gift from Nut that had taken 3 women 2 months to create. Around her neck hung an amber pendant, and her hair was arranged in the style of Norse noble women, with silver threads woven through the braids. The ceremony took place in a sacred grove outside the settlement, where ancient oak trees formed a natural circle around a stone altar. The priest of Thor conducted the rites, calling upon the gods to witness the union and bless it with strength and fertility. Nut and Adela exchanged swords, his grandfather's blade for her father's knife that she had carried since leaving Ravensmead, and rings of gold that had been forged specially for the occasion. When Nut spoke his vows in a strong, clear voice, promising to protect and honor Adela before gods and men, she felt tears threaten. This warrior, this leader of men, this once enemy now pledged himself to her with the same determination he brought to battle. When it came time for Adela to speak her vows, she did so in both Norse and Saxon, bridging the 2 worlds that had collided and merged in their union. I pledge myself to you, Cnut Asgarson, she said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. In this world and whatever worlds may follow. May our bond bring strength to both our peoples and heal the wounds of the past. The feast that followed lasted 3 days, with mead and ale flowing freely, musicians playing until their fingers blistered, and enough food to feed the entire settlement twice over. Warriors who had initially opposed the union now raised toasts to their jarl's bride, won over by the sincerity of the ceremony and, perhaps, by the generosity of Nut's hospitality. On the 3rd night, as the celebrations began to wind down, Nut led Adela away from the great hall to a quiet spot overlooking the fjord. The summer night was never truly dark this far north, merely dimming to a perpetual twilight before brightening again toward dawn. Are you happy, my queen? He asked, his arm around her waist. Queen, she repeated, still unused to the title. It seems strange to hear it. It is what you are now. What you have earned. He turned her to face him. But you haven't answered my question. Adela looked up at him, this man who had entered her life as a wounded enemy and now stood before her as husband, protector, partner. Yes, she said simply. I am happy. Even so far from your home? Even among people who were once your enemies. Home is not a place, she replied, placing her hand over his heart. It is here. With you. He covered her hand with his own. When I lay wounded in that gorse thicket, waiting to die, I could never have imagined this moment. You have given me more than my life, Adela. You have given me a new way of seeing the world. And you have given me courage I never knew I possessed, she said softly. The courage to follow my heart even when it led me away from everything familiar. As they stood together in the gentle summer night, Adela thought of the journey that had brought them to this moment, from enemies to reluctant allies to lovers to husband and wife. It had not been an easy path, nor was the road ahead likely to be without challenges. There would always be those who clung to old hatreds, who saw their union as a betrayal of ancient loyalties. But in creating their life together, they had begun something new, a bridge between peoples, a promise that love could transcend the boundaries of culture and history. Their children would carry both Saxon and Norse blood, would learn the stories and songs of both peoples, would embody the possibility of a different future. What are you thinking? Cnut asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. About our children, she replied honestly. About what they will inherit from us. A smile touched his lips. Strength from both sides. Wisdom from their mother. Perhaps stubbornness from their father. And a world where they need not choose between their heritage, Adela added. Where they can be proud of both. A worthy legacy, Cnut agreed. Though perhaps not one I would have sought before meeting you. As the first light of dawn began to brighten the eastern sky, they returned to the settlement hand in hand, the Saxon healer who had saved a wounded enemy, and the Viking chief who had vowed to make her his queen. A promise kept, a new chapter begun, a love that had transcended ancient hatreds to forge something stronger than either of them could have imagined alone. In the years that followed, their union would face challenges, raids from rival jarls, suspicions from both Norse and Saxon visitors, the natural difficulties of blending two different worlds. But the foundation they had built proved stronger than the forces that sought to divide them. And in time, the story of Cnut and Adela became legend, a tale told in both Norse and Saxon lands of how love could grow in the most unlikely soil, and how ancient enemies could become the closest of allies when they found the courage to see beyond the prejudices of the past.